Welcome to 5 Dubs by MDDC Press. I'm your host, Rebecca Snyder, the Executive Director of the Maryland, Delaware, and DC Press Association, which represents news media in our region. 5 Dubs focuses on the who, what, when, where, and why of local news media. We'll talk with the journalists about the stories behind the news. You can find more information about our guests in the show notes or on our website, www.5-dubs.com. We're here in the studio today with Tracy Simmons of FAVS News Service, and you are the founder, conceptor, and all-around bottle washer, really, for this wire service that looks at religion as sort of a coverable institution in the Pacific Northwest.
Yes.
So, Tracy, welcome to the show, and tell us a little bit about, I gave the down and dirty, like this is what it is, but tell us more about FAVS and what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So FAVS News, we've gone through a couple iterations. We were called Spokane Faith and Values for a while, but now we go by FAVS News because we have grown so much, and we're not just covering Spokane, we're covering Washington, Idaho. I'm hoping to cover a little bit more Oregon. And so what it is, yes, I came up with this idea. Actually, when I lived in your neck of the woods, I was living in Connecticut. I was the religion reporter for a paper there. And in 2009, I think we all kind of remember when, the economy crashed. And I was watching all of my friends who were religion reporters, getting laid off. And I did not get laid off, but my paper got rid of the faith section. First, they got rid of the TV guide. They really, really tried to keep the religion finally had to get rid of the faith section. And they asked me to go cover the bureau. And so I became a bureau reporter. And the most exciting thing that happened in that particular town was Thomas the Train would come through. And it was this big story. And it was fun. But I was like, this is not why I went to journalism school. And so I, in the middle of that economic crisis, I quit my job at the paper. And I started my own publication back then in 2009. It was called Creedable, which is a name I still love and still own. And my goal was to cover Connecticut as an independent religion reporter. And it was really successful. It was so exciting because, Connecticut's small enough where I physically could cover the whole state. But also, all of these clergy folks and these authors and these former religion reporters were asking if they could write for me. And then I had churches and other nonprofits asking if they could advertise. So, I think the reason why it really drew people back then, especially, is because, multimedia was really popular, and I was able to take people inside these houses of worship through photo and sounds and video, but also write it. And then also have this really active comment section. It was really, really cool. And the Religion News Service saw what I was doing, and they actually purchased my website from me. And then, anyways, long story short, that's how I ended up in Spokane. They had this idea that we could cover religion at a local level by having these, religion news hubs. Unfortunately, the funding didn't last like they had hoped. And so after about a year, they said, that's not really working. They had launched 5 hubs. And so I said, well, I think my site is actually bringing in a little revenue. It's making a difference. And so I bought my site back. I made it a local nonprofit, which, takes a little bit of time. And so that was in 2013, I think. And since then, we have grown to include, I think I have 15 freelance religion reporters, and I have 40 columnists from different faith backgrounds. A lot of mainline Christians, but also, evangelical and Muslim and Jewish, writing often about current events through their faith lens. So it's really exciting to have watch it grow. And we have become a regional religion newswire, which is really exciting. I think that publishers are realizing that, religion is something that people are interested in learning about.
Hmm.
It's a part of their, I mean, they have an opinion about it no matter what they practice or don't practice. And so now we're providing content to 13 regional news publishers, and that number continues to grow. And we have a couple of national outlets on our list as well.
That's huge and so much to unpack there. So I kind of want to go back to the start. I didn't realize that Connecticut was such a hotbed of religious interest. So, like, do you think that it was just sort of like a crux of space and time, and you were coming out of a, secular newspaper that really did focus? Like, did you create your market by being a religion reporter, or is there something about Connecticut that we need to know about in terms of that interest in religion?
I think it's a combination, actually. So I think I had spent a little bit of time on the beat and had lots of contacts there, including um, Hartford Institute for Religion Research. And in Connecticut, there is a lot of really old line churches because it's an old state, right? And so you
Hmm.
have, a lot of UCC churches and a lot of diversity. It was really fun being a religion reporter there because on the same city block, there would be a mosque and a Christian church and maybe a synagogue. So I loved covering religion out there. But what's interesting is a lot of people also think Washington State is kind of this unchurched, area. Yet we have this vibrant religion news publication. And I think it's because I think the same thing is that there's churches and there's houses of worship in even these unchurched states. And what we're seeing now is that there's a lot of people who maybe don't belong, they're doing this individual spiritual journey, right? So maybe they don't
Hmm.
belong to a congregation, but they still really want to have these challenging spiritual conversations. And I think I've seen that in both places.
Well, and I think as a journalist, I'm really interested in, you can cover religion as an institution. And I think that's really actually very important because, you know, government, business, religion, those are all forces that shape our lives.
Yeah.
And I think religion sometimes gets short shrift because journalists are loath to kind of get involved and feeling like. So, can you talk a little bit about how, as a journalist, you kind of struggle with those big faith spirituality discussions and what your strategy has been as you cover either religious institutions or, religion writ large?
You know, I I've been doing this a long time. I think I've been a religion reporter for almost or about 25 years now.
Wow.
And so it just comes natural to me that I look for the religion angle in every story. School board, city council, sports, business. And if you look hard enough, it's there. And so I don't think it's super hard to find these religion stories, but now they're becoming a little more charged because
Mhm.
of the political climate that we're in. And so my strategy is um, I have a whole folder full of story ideas, and then I kind of assign them out to my reporters based on what their interest is and what their skill set is. And then, really remind them that this isn't about you. This is about what other people have to say on this topic. And I kind of, I just trust them and I do a lot of mentorship. I do a lot of training because religion is a really hard beat because everyone has an opinion about it.
Mhm.
Um, but I think my reporters have done a good job of staying out of it. That's what I have the opinion writers for, and they have plenty to write about. But you're absolutely right. I have a sweatshirt that I like to wear from the Religion News Association that says "Religion is always in the room," and I think it's pretty accurate.
Mhm. It is, and so actually, I'm just thinking of, topics that might be covered, and so when you are a religion reporter, but you're covering, areas of the state legislature, are you kind of going of the angle about how someone's spiritual beliefs are fueling what kind of legislation is coming in, or are you truly like, okay, this is a religious focus on, like, is it a lens or is it a topic, I guess is the best way to ask that.
Yeah, I think it depends, right? Like here in Washington, I think a lot of the times it's a lens, right? So,
Mhm.
okay, we're looking at transgender athletes playing sports in high schools. What do what do churches have to say about that, or what does clergy have to say? But over in Idaho, because I live 8 miles from the Idaho border, and so
Oh, wow, you're
I think
covering everything.
yeah, we cover. So in Idaho, it's a little bit different because a lot of the political issues are backed by religious organizations, and so
Mm.
it's naturally a religion story.
Interesting. And
Yeah,
so when you I love the idea that you've just sort of picked up from Connecticut and went all the way to Washington and were able to kind of replicate that. Did
yeah.
you head to Washington with the express purpose of starting that local hub in Washington? And where else were those hubs when RNA had Religious News Association or Religious News Service, sorry, had started their sort of patch model?
Yeah. So they wanted to keep the site that I started in Connecticut. They just renamed it from Treatable to it was like Hartford. It was Faith and Values Hartford. That was kind of how they renamed it. That's where we got the faves from.
Mhm,
But I had already been, I was kind of a restless journalist at the time. I'd bounced around to a few other newsrooms across the country. Um, so I said, I already got it started here. I want to go somewhere else. And I
mhm.
picked Spokane. I had never been here in my life. But my grandma had recently moved to Port Townsend, which is a
Okay.
beautiful part of the state. And my aunt lives there as well. But I knew Port Townsend was not a good, like, it, it just wasn't the right place
Mhm.
for a religion news website. Um, I picked Spokane because at the time, there were three religious institutions. So there's Gonzaga, Whitworth, and there was Moody, which has since closed. And there's 500 houses of worship in the county. They're not all full. I mean, some of them have 12 people in them. Some of them are very robust. Um, but I thought this would be a good market to start this publication. So that's why I picked Spokane. The other sites, we had one based out of Mizzou, and we had one in North Carolina, and we had one in Ohio. And those are based on where we had reporters who were willing to take on this endeavor who already were covering religion.
Sure. Well, and it sounds like then the sort of the crucible, the important pieces would be that there are religious institutions like colleges with deep religious
Yeah.
backgrounds or sort of institutional places like that, and also a preponderance of churches or houses or faith communities there. So it wasn't that there were a lot of. And is it really just the numbers, or is it kind of the vibe of that space as well that you're looking for? Maybe a population that was just super interested in those topics.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know the vibe a whole lot
Hmm.
until I got here. So at first it was just kind of looking at the market, thinking, okay, I think they're based on the universities and based on the number of houses of worship and the fact that the Spokesman Review, which is the main newspaper there, didn't have a religion reporter anymore.
Right.
I thought
Hmm.
we could fill this gap. It seems like there's a lot of interest. And then when I got there, there definitely was a vibe, which is might be kind of surprising to people. If you go to pretty much any coffee shop in Spokane, no, I shouldn't say pretty much any, but numerous coffee shops in Spokane, you're going to see people having Bible study or maybe a student studying the scripture. There might be some
Hmm.
Christian music on in the background. So the vibe there was that, wow, there is a pretty faithful community here, but there's also, a lot of religious diversity. We have two Sikh temples. We have a couple of Buddhist communities. So it's actually a really interesting place to do religion reporting. And then, of course, you have the nuns, NONES. We have a lot of people
Hmm.
and in fact, most of our audience for faves are people who maybe are spiritual but not religious,
Right.
which I know is a term people don't like. But so I think that's really, really interesting. We also have a lot of academics reading the website and a lot of clergy. So,
Sure. Well, and I'm interested also, we started out sort of like talking from a Christian lens, but faith and values sort of rides along all different faiths. And
yes.
so I'm interested in that choice of terminology, faith and values, and how that permeates sort of the mindset of the wire service. And then I want to get into
Mhm.
some of the mechanics of how that
Yeah.
wire service works.
Yeah. I have to be honest with you. So we're called Faiths News, and I don't like the name. I
Okay.
didn't get to
Lay it
name
out
it. It
there.
was yeah, the Religion News Service when they acquired us, they came up with the name. And so what I did, so it was called originally it was called Spokane Faith and Values. Um, And then I tried to kind of hide the faith and values by making it FAVS, FAVS with a hard A. Um,
Hmm.
because I felt like faith and values felt a little too Christian. And
Hmm.
so we just call it Faves News, and then we just are try to be really clear in our mission that we're non-sectarian and that we do cover all religions. But my original name was Creedable, and I think Creed is such a good name. I like that because
Like
it
so
is like
CREED, like the creed.
yeah,
Okay.
the Creed. Um, but with faith and it is important that people know we cover faith, but we also cover values or ethics. And so that really opens up the stories that we can do. So it's not necessarily just about religion, but if you throw in ethics and values in there, you can really get people talking. And like I said, opens up the doors. So we have humanist writers, we have atheist, agnostic.
And I love that because I think when you do open it up to like people's moral compass and their ethics and how they navigate
Yeah,
into the world, that has a very deep spiritual component, but not necessarily, most people do sort of backdoor that conversation in like that's sort of included in religion as like the
yeah,
bonus. But when
hmm,
you can look at like, okay, what are the values in which you operate within the world and how do you have coherence and how do you like knit it all together? You have a really rich dialogue. And I love that
yeah,
you have humanist and atheist voices in that discussion, that it's not that it's not just sort of religion writ large, but it's what you have faith in.
absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
And so can you talk a little bit, before we get into the mechanics of the news service, it occurs to me that, the religion reporting world is not that large. Um, so how are you sourcing those 15 independent journalists and those 40 columnists? Like that feels like a lot of people, even if you are, in Washington and Idaho, even if you've expanded your jurisdiction, that still seems like a lot of people who are interested in doing this work. So tell me about the people
Yeah.
who are called to it.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And that number is growing, which is so exciting. I think there's a lot of people, as far as the commentary side, who maybe already have blogs or they're writing, for their local weekly paper or whatever, a little, a religion column. And so I just kind of tapped into that. Um, it used to be when I first started, everyone who wrote for me, I would go have coffee with, and we'd have a conversation. And we've grown so big now that it's mostly email or calls or maybe a Zoom chat to really kind of vet folks. But our rule is no proselytizing. Other than that, I have an associate editor who she does all the copy editing. Will take out anything that seems questionable. But honestly, our writers are so passionate about what they do and respectful of one another. We don't really have any issues. As far as the reporters, it's been really interesting. I'm also part of the Religion News Association's Emerging Journalists cohort, where we kind
Mhm.
of offer mentorship and training for up and coming religion reporters. And there is a boom right now. There are a lot of people who want to become religion reporters or are really interested in the beat. And so our freelancers, most of them already do journalism. Maybe they do journalism uh, full time through freelance or it's a little side hustle. But they are genuinely interested in religion reporting. And I would say I have um, maybe half of those want to do religion reporting full time if they could.
Mm.
So it's really cool. And I think a lot of those are coming from Whitworth. So they're studying journalism at Whitworth University, which is a Presbyterian school. I've had several come through Gonzaga, which is Jesuit, and they're
Mhm.
studying journalism. We have a pretty great internship program. So they'll come do an internship with us. And when they graduate, they just keep writing for us.
Right.
It's really fun. I also teach religion reporting right now at Washington State University.
Mhm.
And so a lot of those students, they come through that program and then they want to get involved in religion reporting. And so, yeah, so we have a lot of young people interested in the beat who are getting some clips by working with us.
So you've been working in this beat area for a long time. So 25 years is nothing to sneeze at. So like, what do you think is fueling this kind of renewed interest from younger people to being really interested and committed to this beat?
It's a good question. On the readership side and the publishers who want our content, I think a lot of it's driven by the political atmosphere that we're in. But I think with students, it's different. I think with younger journalists, I think they're genuinely curious about theology. They want to, and they really care about social justice and, the values that drive people. I notice, at least with my students, um, they're very curious because maybe they don't practice anything, but they have a strong set of values. Or
Hmm.
maybe their parents didn't practice anything, but their grandparents did. And so they want to
Mm.
know, they find it's really cool to see that they genuinely want to know, well, how is an Episcopalian different than a Baptist? And so we're
Right.
able to have those conversations and point to articles that are being written about those denominations. And I think they really like the experiential part of it. So let's go into that mosque that you've driven by 17 times, and check it out. And so it just unlocks something in them that drives that curiosity, and it challenges them to keep their own opinions out, but they want to learn at the same time. And I
Hmm.
just don't know if other beats really provide that, you know?
Right. Just, yeah, it's sort of, it helps foster their own curiosity and spiritual journey, it sounds like, as well as fulfilling like, okay, I'm learning, I'm sharing this with the world.
Yeah.
So earlier you had said you have, sort of your long list of topics to assign and whatnot. How are you, so as a news service, you are available to all publications, some publications? Tell me a little bit about that, and then we can get into like how you decide what you're going to cover and
Yeah.
how you're going to sort of manage your 40 commentators too and what they're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. So, um, we made the decision as a board just this week, actually, that we were not going to pursue a Creative Commons license because I was really wondering about that because we work a lot with State's Newsroom and their Creative Commons, and I love their model and I love that our work can go so many places. But what we did is we looked back at this year to see how many times our stories were republished, and they were republished in 177 times, which we thought was pretty good. Like we're pretty proud of that, and
Yeah.
that number is growing by the day. Um, so what we do is we charge for our content for some newsrooms, usually the ones that are for profit, and then we give our content away right now to nonprofit newsrooms. And so that model seems to be working for us because we're making a little bit of revenue, not a lot, but we're also reaching a lot of people. So we're
Hmm.
pretty excited about that. Yeah.
So then, and just looking at the website, which for those listening is FAVS.news. So
Thank you.
FAVS News. Which thank goodness for the .news
I
extension these
know it's
days.
great.
That's
Yeah.
perfect. So, there's a lot of really specific content in your geographic area, but then there's also just some sort of broader strokes. So
Yeah.
who's pulling this content? Is it just news publications in your area, or are you finding a more national audience in some ways?
So we have several regional publishers, like the Spokesman Review is one of they publish a lot of our content, which is really wonderful. Moscow Pullman Daily News is a smaller daily paper down by where I live. So we have some of those, but we also just started partnering with KUOW, which is the NPR affiliate up in Seattle.
Hmm.
We partner with Spokane Public Radio and Northwest Public Broadcasting. So like geographically, we're covered by or we're providing content to a lot of NPR affiliates, which is super exciting because I have a deep, deep love for public radio. Um, we also have a Methodist publication of all things down in Texas,
Oh,
and
interesting.
we publish a lot of our content. In fact, they emailed me today asking if they could republish one of our columns by our humanist writer, which is pretty cool. Um, and then we give a lot of our content to Religion Unplugged, which is a national digital
Hmm.
publication that covers religion. We're starting to develop a relationship right now with two other national publications, which is very cool. Christian Century, which is a
Hmm.
mainline publication, more on the progressive side, and then also Interfaith America. So, and those are just getting started, but it's really neat to see uh, because I think there's a lot of I love the Religion News Service and Religion Unplugged, but they cover, big cities and big national events, and no one's really covering local religion news at this level. So we're the only ones
Hmm.
doing it, and I think the Pacific Northwest gets overlooked a lot. So I'm glad that we can fill that void.
Absolutely. Now, are there other? I feel like there's not a lot of not a lot of models like yours. And then after RNS kind of pulled the plug on those other outlets. Are you the last one left standing, or are there other similar
We are
types of publications out there?
we are the only digital publication that covers news at the local level, and then provides it regionally like this. So we have a very, very unique model.
No, that's so cool. And so if people are interested in, say there's a article on your website, I'm assuming that's how people see your
Yeah.
content. It's not like it's being distributed in any other way. Somebody looks on the website, they say, I would love to republish that. Do they just contact you, or how does that work?
Yeah, kind of. So, what I do is I actually have a system. So every Monday morning, I have a list of publishers who've asked to see our news budget for the week, and anyone can get on that list. And then I email everyone Monday morning and I say, hey, this is what we have for news this week. This is what we have for commentary. If you want anything, just let me know. So that's one way. Sometimes people see something on our website or in our newsletter or whatever, and they think they would like to republish it, and they just reach out to me and we can have a
Mhm.
conversation about that. Yeah.
And then are you deciding, or how do you decide what you're covering? You had said earlier that you had a ton of things that you're sort of shopping out to different reporters and whatnot. So I think just from a like news budgeting standpoint, I think it's
Yeah.
you're trying to cover a lot of different bases. How do you
Mhm.
make those choices, and how do you do that process?
Yeah. It's sometimes we have more stories than we can cover in a timely fashion. So I subscribe to hundreds of church newsletters, and so I get them usually once a week. And I scroll through those and decide if there's something here that could be interesting as a news story. So, for example, um, in one of the statewide religious newsletters we got, I saw that a Methodist bishop had started a podcast, and his
Hmm.
podcast was he was interviewing clergy about their call to ministry, clergy in Alaska, Washington, all over, and so I thought that's an interesting feature story and statewide story. So we just published that one this week, and that's the story a story idea I got from a newsletter. So newsletters are really valuable. We also have a community calendar that anyone can post stuff to, and sometimes I think faith communities don't realize they have something that's newsworthy, but I see it on the
Sure.
calendar and I'm like, okay, we're gonna pursue this and get a story. Um, I also keep tabs, of course, on national news. And so I haven't even assigned the story yet because everyone's working on a story right now. But I saw a news alert today that Catholic um, hospitals can no longer do transgender affirming care or gender
Oh,
affirming
right.
care.
Hmm.
And we have a lot of Catholic hospitals in our area. So that's a story where I can easily, not easily, but we can localize, and so
Hmm.
I'm going to assign that to somebody. Um, and then we also get, my reporters pitch me a lot of stories, which is really fun
Hmm.
because I can't keep tabs on everything. So I had a reporter recently say, hey, have you heard that this church is closing after 100 years? Um, so I said, no, I didn't know that. So she's doing that story. So I'm definitely always open to pitches too.
No, it sounds like there's just a lot of ponies in the line that you're keeping track of. And so how do you balance that? Because it's not a passion project for you. This is a really, strong piece of your working life, but it's not the only piece of your working life. So how do you juggle that with nurturing young minds at WFU?
Yeah, so I do teach full time right now at Washington State, and I also do FAVS full time. It's definitely a full time job. It's a full time job, but a part time paying job. And so the the dream would be to be able to do FAVS full time. I really love the journalism and the religion reporting, and I love how I've seen it really help people understand one another. And there's nothing more that I could ask. That's so cool. But I do need like insurance and I need a job. Luckily for me, uh, WSU, I'm career track, so I don't have to
Mhm.
do any research. And I'm able to do like 10% of my job is doing scholarly work, which includes my journalism. So I can do a little bit of faith stuff and like this podcast, I can tell them that I did that and that'll go on my my evaluation and stuff. So
Oh, good.
they
I'm glad we're
support,
contributing.
yeah. So they support my religion project, although I do have to teach a lot of classes like copy editing and stuff that's not, super exciting for me, but at
Mhm.
least I get to work with young students. So.
Now, do you teach religion reporting as part of your classroom load, or are you doing what kind of reporting classes are you teaching?
So I teach public affairs reporting, and then I teach multi-platform reporting. So it's kind of like multimedia. And
Mhm.
then I also am on rotation. I'm not teaching it now, but I also teach our intro news writing class, which is a really, really hard class for students and a hard uh, load for us because there's so much grading involved. Um,
Sure.
but I also have a religion reporting class that was funded through a gift from a seminary. And so as soon as that money goes away, that class will probably go away, which is unfortunate. But
Mhm.
I have about half the budget left, and so what that class looks like right now is we do field trips, which is we have one on Sunday. We're going to a Baptist church together, and I
Mm.
want them to be a little uncomfortable and try to talk to the pastor and try to take pictures during a service, which they all get scared because you can hear the click.
Oh, sure. It is
And I want
nerve-wracking.
them to, yeah, and I want them to take notes. And they don't have to produce any journalism out of it because a lot of them actually aren't journalism majors who take that class. So it's almost more of like a religious media literacy course.
Mhm.
But it's my favorite class that I teach.
Oh, it sounds like it. So now what lessons do you draw out? Because just like, you're sort of seeing that religious or faith lens through a lot of different stories. When you're
Mhm,
teaching, like what do you think, and I guess writ large for journalists everywhere, what can religion reporting teach
mhm.
reporters who are working in other beats?
Oh, yeah. I love that question. And I try to encourage my students to take on a religion story or take my religion class, even if they want to be sports reporters, which is most students these days,
Right.
or be a business reporter, or you want to cover city council. Because I think the religion beat really teaches you how, like no other beat does, how to talk to people who have a different belief system, maybe a different, culture than you. You have to go to places that you've never been and you have to learn new customs. Like maybe you have to, if you're a woman, maybe you have to cover your head or take off your shoes, and I
Mhm.
think those experiences um, just really help you down the line because the chances are, even if you do cover sports, there's a lot of religion sports stories out there and you might be the one to have to cover it. So
Mhm.
um, just kind of knowing that basic etiquette and having that experience of just talking to people, I think goes a long, long way.
Do you think because I feel like in the world right now, especially in the US, there's this reticence to talking about faith that either people feel like, "Oh, well, gosh, if I talk about my religion or my spiritual journey, I'll be
Mhm.
thought of in a different way," or I'm afraid to ask because I don't want like, what if they don't believe what I believe? And like, do you find that is the case, and is that something that you like? I think being able to push through some of that
Mhm.
discomfort
Yeah.
is really useful. But do you have tactics for like your
Mhm.
students and just people in general when they're feeling like this is really uncomfortable? I don't know what to expect. How do you
Yeah.
navigate that?
Um, what I've noticed is students definitely do feel uncomfortable, but I mean, I try to make the atmosphere as comfortable, as safe as possible. So I share a little of myself with them in hopes that they return a little bit back. And then that's when the conversation really starts to get started. And all of a sudden they realize they're really curious about, this religion because of something their family member said, you know, so it takes a little prodding, I guess. But then once that gets unleashed, it's really fun to see their wheels start to turn, and they start to get a little more comfortable talking to the people sitting next to them about something so sensitive.
Mhm.
While also they also want to hear what they have to say. So it's pretty. I don't know if it works, but I think it works. So, but I think
Well,
the
and
key is sharing some of myself.
it just strikes me that that sort of initial vulnerability and sharing kind of opens up two-way communication so that you can kind of bridge divides. And I think the world
Yes.
is so polarized in many ways that, it feels like this black and white and an abyss in between. And it feels like in some ways with that active experiential piece and
Mhm.
that urge to reach out and share yourself and be vulnerable first, you're building
Yeah.
bridges. Am I kind of getting that right? Or
Absolutely, and I think that extends, um several years ago, the Spokesman Review, I had been kind of offering some religion coverage to them. That relationship has really grown since then. But they asked me if I would write a religion column. And I was like, I don't know, religion or reporters aren't supposed to write opinion pieces.
right.
But
Yes.
then I thought about it and I was like, yeah, I was like, this is a good opportunity to tell people about faves. And I realized that people were making assumptions about me anyway, right? They were assuming my beliefs were whatever or that my political views. And so I decided to go ahead and write this column and be a little vulnerable and share. And I definitely walk the line a little. I don't talk about anything too controversial. The column I just wrote was about one of my chickens died and
Oh,
I
I'm
had to
sorry.
cull her, which was horrible for me, but how I reached out to a chaplain to talk about that process and that experience for me and how that chaplain and then I turned it into a column about chaplains and how chaplains are. I used a chaplain, but there's also chaplains not only at the veterinary school here, but at the airport and maybe with a motorcycle club. And so it was. I don't know. That's an example where I've noticed that as I give a little bit of myself in this column, I get a lot in return because people know me. People write. I have like the dedicated followers. And
Oh,
so I
that's
think
nice.
it's actually created more trust in a way.
Hmm. And I think actually that feels the way sort of traditional journalism has come about. The reporter's never part of the story. So I feel
Yeah.
are you
Yeah.
seeing? And I also know that people coming out of journalism school now are inherently different than people coming out of journalism school 30 years ago, of course. So do you
Right.
feel like that, is that something unique to religion reporters? Or are you seeing
Right.
like sort of mainstream reporters having that same impulse to almost bring themselves into the story a little bit?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, over the years, I've definitely known a lot of religion reporters who had columns
Hmm.
as well, but not everybody. And it's definitely a divisive issue. Some people say
Right.
definitely not. Um, I noticed like sports reporters really want to put themselves. It seems like want to put themselves into it. Broadcast, of course,
Hmm.
um, but at least for my writers, they can't be in the story, right? It can't be first
Hmm.
person, no hour, no editorializing. And we are very careful to label what is news and what is opinion on the website. But we have some who do a little crossover, like our associate editor. She's a journalist. She has an article coming out tomorrow, pretty hard hitting piece, but she also writes her Ask an Evangelical column.
Oh,
So, and
interesting.
in her
Okay.
bio, yeah, and the bios are really important. So in the bio at the bottom, of everyone's story, I tell them like, if you're comfortable, go ahead and tell us what church you go to or what your views are, or whatever. Um, However personal you want to get, because I do just kind of think it makes it more transparent.
Sure. Yeah, and everyone has their own set of perspectives and bias
Right.
and thoughts that they
Yeah.
come with. And if you can't
Yeah.
acknowledge that, it doesn't feel like you're really connecting or being transparent
Yeah.
with the community that you're serving.
Yeah, and I think what's neat too is so maybe by reading my column, people will realize like I'm queer and I've written about being queer. But I still have a great relationship with churches that are not open and affirming. And that's because I think they've seen my reporting over the years doesn't reflect my own, views on those issues. And I think they
Hmm.
can see that with our associate editor as well. Like she's evangelical, but she can cover any issue, and you can't tell she's not editorializing.
Hmm.
So I think
Well,
it adds
hallmark of a
credibility.
great
Yeah.
reporter right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, what is next for Fave News? I mean, you had talked about this. Maybe, one day it would be great to be able to do this to get rid of one of your full time jobs, and have Faves be your main living. But how do you see it evolving in the next few years?
I think the wire part of this is really taking off. So my goal in 2026 is, because we started out kind of just covering Spokane, and then we kind of
Mhm.
branched into covering North Idaho, and then the Palouse, which is where I live. Um, and in 2026, I really want us to cover all of Washington State. It's a big state,
Mm.
you know, and I think we're getting there. We have a reporter in Seattle right now, which is really cool. So that's like in 2026, that's my goal. And we're actually in the middle of, or we just started our end of year fundraiser. We're trying to raise $15,000. And that's not a whole lot of money, but for us it is. And that would fund a part-time religion reporter. So that would be huge for us.
So, and I wanted to understand like what holds you back from that goal. So is it
Yeah.
that you need someone to like manage the ponies, or you need someone to write? What's holding you back from your 2026 goal?
Funding, honestly, right now,
Mhm.
just we want to, we want to pay our freelancers a good amount of money,
Mhm.
or, like a livable freelance wage.
You're a good
We
person. We
also,
appreciate that.
yeah, of course. And then also, our website is, because we're getting so big and we have 13 years ish of content on there. That's a lot of like memory.
Uh-huh.
And then we're paying because we have bots, right, attacking us. We have to up our security. So our website fees have gotten really expensive. And I see that getting more expensive as we add more bells and whistles, and maybe we add some geotagging, right? So people in Seattle can see certain things. So funding is our biggest challenge, because, and I'm sure if there's anyone out there who runs an online publication, it's not a tangible thing. And so it's really hard to get people to donate and we want to give our content away for free. We don't want to put up a paywall.
Uh-huh.
Um, we have a ton of grant applications out there, but people are really afraid of religion, and they don't want, they don't know if they should fund and they think that we're religious. And so I have to do a lot of messaging that we are not, we cover religion. We cover all religions, right? We're
Uh-huh.
non-sectarian. Um, but I don't know. Something's got to land. I have a lot of applications out there.
Absolutely. I feel it will. And, it's sort of like when you have a house, putting on gutters is like the unsexiest thing you can do, but it's
Right.
so critical. So yes, like
Absolutely.
making sure
Yeah.
your website is functional is really
Yeah.
important. And I do feel like it is, it's hard right now in a philanthropic way
Yeah.
to compete against, putting food on people's tables, or
Absolutely.
like
Yeah.
feeling like we need to be funding different priorities.
Yeah.
But funding understanding, I think, is really critical. And religion is, you're right, faith permeates everything that we do, no matter what the faith is. So
Yeah.
coming from a place of understanding. Well, I
Yeah.
hope that it comes. So, and being statewide is like, that's a huge goal, and everybody wants to be statewide now. So you're very current.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I mean, I think the pipe dream, the long dream, is to not just cover Washington. We're already covering parts of Idaho, and that's growing as well. But I would love to cover Alaska, Montana, Oregon.
mm,
That's a region that really is undercovered. And I
mhm.
think there's a lot of stories to be told there.
No, I agree. Well, I can't wait to hear more of those stories, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me
Thank you, Rebecca.
today. And so if listeners are interested, go to Fave News, FAVS.NEWS, and check it out. It's very, very interesting. And Tracy, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Sure.
Thanks for listening to 5 Dubs with Rebecca Snyder. Please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review wherever you download your podcasts so that others can find us. What do you want to know about local journalism? Email me at rsnyder, SNYDER, at mddcpress.com. Interested in supporting our podcast and journalism? Please donate to our 501c3 Press Foundation. Find out more and see the full episode list and show notes at www.5-dubs.com.